Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another LinkedIn Live session. My name is Nilly Gulf, and today we are going to jump into the fascinating world of payroll, because we all do think it is fascinating. Today I am delighted to be joined by Brendan Blewett, the director and mastermind behind People in Payroll, and we will be discussing the mysteries of payroll employment in Australia. Now, if any of you have tried to source payroll talent down under, you know that it can feel like searching for a needle in a haystack. It seems that the job to talent ratio is absolutely crazy, and we will get into this part obviously shortly. But you know, that's not all. We'll be talking about a lot of other things. We'll chat about the must-have skills and qualifications payroll professionals need to get a start in the payroll world, and also to further develop in the payroll world. Now, of course, you can't speak payroll without speaking about payroll tech and the impact of new tech on the skills needed by payroll professionals. We will also investigate the trends in tech, what payroll professionals need to look out for in the future, and how to get ahead, and loads more, obviously. But please do remember that this is an interactive session. We want you to be involved as much as you can. So please do feel free to pop in and ask your questions. And we can even start by asking people to tell us which city, state, region, or even country that they're joining us from. So please do pop your comments in. We'd definitely like to hear from you. So without further ado, let's jump in. Brendan, welcome. It's fantastic to have you here. I can't wait to hear your thoughts and insights. How are you, by the way? I mean, I think I probably should have asked you that, before anything else. So how are you, Brendan? Welcome.
I'm really good, Nilly. Thank you for having me. It's really good to be here. I'm excited to chat about payroll.
Great, fantastic. Now, I think just as a quick intro, can you, just introduce yourself and share your experience in the payroll recruitment industry?
Yes, certainly. So good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am Brendan. I head up things here at People in Payroll. We are a specialist recruitment organisation solely focused across your payroll, HRIS and governance. I myself have been recruiting for well over 7 years, with the last 3.5 focused within the industry. In regards to kind of my experience within the payroll space over the last couple of years, highlights for myself would be being involved with large-scale implementations from businesses from 200 up to 25,000, complex projects across LSL, AL, STP, large-scale remediation projects, supporting organisations through Royal Commissions, senior leadership roles across ASX-listed organisations, standalone positions, system specialist roles, governance roles, payroll BAs, analysts, pretty much everything and anything related to payroll, HRIS, and governance at this point in time is kind of my experience there. There's a bit of a background, Nilly.
Yep, there's a lot to talk about there. But what initially drew you to specialise in payroll recruitment?
I think like most of us here, I very much found myself, one, falling into recruitment, and then falling into payroll itself. It definitely was not planned. I think what drew me to payroll is definitely the people within the payroll industry, as well as the complexity of it. Payroll at times is very underappreciated, misunderstood, and it has some of the most dedicated and hardworking individuals that I've had the pleasure to work with. Very much, you can tell when you're speaking to someone within the payroll industry. I joke about it being a shared trauma bond between us all, which seems to resonate with many of us in the space. But, payroll is a great bunch of people who, I really do enjoy working with. And just the complexity of the industry itself, there's always, it's a transforming space, right? There's always something happening, some new legislative change, some new tech coming through. There's always something to learn and grow and develop. So it's a space that I find incredibly interesting and also challenging. There's a lot that happens in the space. That's pretty much what drew me into recruiting across payroll.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And I think most of the people who have joined us today would probably also agree. So it might be nice for some of you guys who are listening to or watching to pop your comments in, just to let us know how you started in payroll and what drew you to payroll. So I definitely want to hear from you guys as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the current jobs landscape in Australia, Brendan. How would you describe the current state of the payroll job market in Australia?
I feel, from what I'm seeing, I very much feel it's a wait and see sort of state that we're in. Whether that's just for payroll or for industries as a whole. The last couple of months have been quite slow from what I'm seeing, but I'm also seeing a lot of work in the background. I've got a fair number of clients that have just gone live with quite large system implementations, so they're kind of working through the joys that come along with the go live. A lot of my catch-ups are at the moment are around, getting advice around systems, TNAs, going through that tender process for new system implementations as well. There's
Yeah,
also, I'm getting quite a lot of short-term sort of, LSL, AL leave audit roles or interim payroll managers to come in and support the BAU function to give, current payroll leaders a break. So
yeah,
I feel, even though it is a slow period right now, I do feel that we are kind of building up momentum. I'm also seeing a lot of demergers and mergers within organizations. So a lot of businesses seem to be kind of figuring out, okay, what's the next 2 to 3 years going to look like for us, and what do we need these teams to look like?
yeah. Okay, yeah, definitely. And are there more job opportunities than available talent, or vice versa? What are your thoughts there? Because I think this is like a big area that people talk about in payroll is the job to talent, talent to job ratio. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
I think it's more the discussion around, qualified talent. Like you mentioned at the start, around finding a needle in a haystack. Recruiting within this space is not getting easier from my experience. You think it would after a couple of years working within the space, but it does seem to be getting trickier. I've definitely seen a shift back towards organisations having, more of a say. It very much was a candidate favoured market in the last 2 to 3 years, but I have seen this shift backwards towards organisations. I've got extended interview processes now where it used to be maybe like a one two stage process. We're now seeing 3, 4 testing in between. Organisations are being highly selective with who they'll take across processes. So yeah, there are roles out there, but I'd still say there's always going to be a very high demand for good qualified talent within the space.
Yep. Okay. And do you think this is, well, the problem that we have here is specific to Australia, or do you think it really spreads globally?
I mean, I think it would be across the globe, but I haven't recruited outside of Australia, so I couldn't fully comment.
Yeah.
I think what the tricky part with Australian payroll is that you do need local Australian experience. My understanding is that the Australian payroll landscape is highly complex. I mean, I couldn't find talent outside of Australia to come in and assist. It has to be homegrown, just with all the legislation, all the complexities there. So that's my thoughts. I do believe it would be global, but I couldn't fully comment as I haven't recruited outside of Australia.
Yeah, yeah, and that's fair enough. But look, I mean, I do have to say, I do get a lot of people who reach out to me and ask how they could get into the Australian payroll market from other countries. So it is an interesting one. So, and I think obviously um, it seems to me that payroll in Australia is quite attractive to people from other countries. But I mean, other than that, um, there's probably a lot of other sort of, personal, financial, or political reasons that people might want to sort of travel out to Australia and work in payroll. But, Australia seems to be the place for payroll professionals to be. And why wouldn't you, right? The sun shines, the beaches are great, and payroll fits into everything. So it's fantastic. Now, having talked about the landscape, Brendan, all jokes aside, let's get into talent availability, because I think this is definitely a big one to talk about. It's the one thing many people want to hear about. So, what are the key challenges in finding qualified payroll professionals today?
I think as I mentioned, it's the lack of available qualified experienced candidates, but it's also the skill requirements within the industry are, increasing quite rapidly. We're needing professionals to be multi-skilled. They need to be across HR, payroll, governance and compliance, have high analytical abilities, have highly developed soft and communication skills, and then you add into that specific system experience as well. It's a highly developed skill set that you're needing, and I would argue that there's been a severe lack of investment into not just systems and processes within the space, but also the people within the industry. So it's a bit of a perfect storm that you then add on top of that. We're not seeing that many new fresh blood coming into the space. We're also seeing, we're an aging population. I'm hearing, seeing a lot of retiring from our older generation and specialists, as well as just pure burnout as well, due to this lack of investment and resourcing within the space. Our top talent and burning, every second or third conversation I'm having at the moment with senior leaders is around, do I really want to be in this space anymore? So it's a bit of a perfect storm as to why we're seeing this lack of skill in the space.
Yeah. Okay. And is there a specific segment within payroll that's experiencing a particularly higher demand for talent? Or maybe, we could even sort of break that down and sort of go, well, this segment is experiencing a higher demand. There's a bit, there's a bit of a drop off in the demand for this segment in payroll. What are your thoughts there?
I would say anyone who is a specialist within their prospective system or process. There's a large demand for professionals with governance backgrounds. Obviously, given the current climate that we're in, wage theft penalties are increasing next year. People who can come in, have a look through the books, see that things aren't quite where they need to be, and recommend changes there. Also, somewhat, people with experience around, proven ability to streamline systems and processes, and then also reduce costs within organisation. Budget is a big concern, a big conversation at the moment.
Yep.
So anyone who's got that skill set to show that they've reduced cost and streamlined systems and processes is highly desirable at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So, if anyone does have any questions, please do feel free to pop them in. We're here to answer them. So, speaking skills and qualifications, obviously they're vital topics to discuss in payroll, because, that's definitely an area that everyone is sort of struggling in, probably fair to say. But, skills and qualifications in payroll, they're both, I think, very sort of vast areas as well. And they can also be very different areas in payroll, but they all kind of come together. Changes in legislation and developments in technology, etc., they all make the skill requirements of payroll professionals even more important. And, I sometimes feel that kind of change, they just move the goalposts a little bit every time something new comes in. So once someone has sort of gone, okay, I think I've mastered this now, something else has come in and, they need to increase or change or adapt to a new sort of skill set. In your opinion, Brendan, what skills and qualifications are most sought after in payroll professionals?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. With regards to kind of qualifications, the only times I have clients specifically say around quals is, I need an SAP certified consultant to come in and help with X, Y, Z. So that's the only time I really get some sort of piece of paper asked from myself. For me personally, it's having proven experience across certain systems, certain industries or processes. It's being able, the soft skills piece is becoming more and more important. Being able to effectively communicate, effectively communicate that experience to your manager and the wider business itself. So it's also the motivation and drive within professionals. A lot of senior leaders are wearing many hats at the moment. They're managing BAU, they're managing system implementations, they're then looking after the governance piece. Senior leaders are looking for people within teams to put up their hand and say, hey, do you need a hand with X, Y, Z? Or, taking on, I understand it might be outside of your remit, but that's how you grow and develop. And senior professionals are looking for that sort of, drive from people within the space, within their teams. There's a lot of exciting opportunities out there at the moment, career defining roles, I would argue, for those who are looking for it. You just need to really put your hand up and go for it. So that's the kind of skills that I'm seeing at the moment in high demand.
Yeah. Okay. And Are there any emerging skills or knowledge areas that candidates should focus on to stay competitive?
It definitely soft skills, Excel, ability to read and interpret EBAs and awards, and then also system skills is what I'd say. During an interview, can you actively explain in detail the current EBA and award that you're working with, or if you can't, do you know where to find that information? It's being able to prove that you can do what you say. I get candidates who say, "Oh, I can run an end-to-end process," but then I get them to run me through that process. But can you actually explain that to me? So that's those soft skills are definitely make or break at the moment.
Yep.
And so they would be the key areas that I would be focusing on.
Yeah, yeah. And just to throw a bit of a curveball in here, Brendan,
Right.
you mentioned, the interpretation of awards, which obviously is such a key component of the payroll processing part of the role, and it's obviously probably one of the most important areas that could often be a result of why payroll goes wrong at the end, right? So do you think that enough is being invested into payroll staff or payroll professionals so that they can have a better understanding of that interpretation process, or a better understanding on how to get that information?
I mean, I don't think enough's being done,
Okay.
period, with investment within staff, whether that's internal investment, sessions, or external.
Yep.
But it's also it's a double-edged sword. I mean, most payroll professionals, they're so busy trying to get pays out on time and correctly that you don't have the time to do a 30-minute, 45-minute session for training. So
Yeah.
I would love to see a world where we invest appropriately in the space. It's ever changing, it's ever developing. So it just makes sense that we need to continually train our staff.
Yep.
So yeah, no, I don't think enough's being done.
Yep. Okay, great. So I want to move into a little about industry trends for a minute, Brendan, because I think this certainly has an effect on the skill requirements, or can at the very least, shape what organisations can look for in their payroll teams. So what trends are you seeing in payroll recruitment? For example, is there an increase in remote positions or the use of specific payroll software?
Yeah, so I'm seeing a big push for kind of 3-2 splits. For work from home flexibility. I'm seeing some organisations pushing kind of up to 4-5 as well. But I am seeing teams are leaving those sort of organisations. But 3-2 seems to be um, quite a good split from my understanding. Plus, I would encourage that as well, depending on what's happening in the organisation, especially if candidates are looking to grow and develop themselves. You need to be on site, sitting with the systems team, sitting with seniors, hearing the chatter amongst the team. It's much easier to ask a question when you're sitting beside somebody than kind of through a Teams chat.
Yep.
With regards to kind of recruitment, I'm seeing this trend of needing multi-skilled professionals. Payrolls no longer just sitting in the back corner and processing timesheets. They're very much needing, you need to be across systems, you need to be across processes and governance and whatnot. So it's just, they're very much looking for someone who can potentially fill multiple gaps within a team and plug holes essentially in some instances. So they're the kind of trends that I'm seeing in regards to the working from home flexibilities and whatnot.
Okay. Now, I've got a question here. So before I continue my questions, we might just quickly go through this one. Quasi has asked, what skill sets are sought after most when hunting for a payroll manager? Does system knowledge play a key part when selecting individuals? I think we'll start with the first two questions because there's a few more at the end of it.
Yep. It highly depends what's happening within the organisation. If the organisation is looking to implement a new system, an up and coming system in the next coming years, they might be looking for experience within that system implementation cycle. If there's potential gaps within governance, they might be looking for a payroll manager who has a bit of a background or dealt with, setting up a framework of governance within organizations. If it's just running if it's, dealing within operations, they'll be looking for, system specific experience. It'll be similar team size or organization size, the payroll size essentially. So I know that's a broad answer, but it depends on what's happening within the organization and what they're needing from this payroll leader.
Okay. And just to continue the same question, Kwasi has said, as a payroll professional, I have undertaken 4 different leadership roles without having prior system knowledge. I must say it didn't affect my decision making and streamlining the process. So does system knowledge, should system knowledge be given such importance? So in his experience, he hasn't had it and he's been successful. So do you think really we should place a lot of importance on system knowledge?
I mean, look, my opinion is payroll professionals are very good at picking things up and running with it. Payroll professionals are very good at just running with it, is my experience. Certain organizations put a large importance on systems. But I've also placed candidates with not the right system experience, but who are switched on, highly motivated, and they've absolutely killed. This not having the system experience didn't matter. They picked it up within a month or 2. So I think it's it depends on the person and their ability to adapt and change. And that's my opinion on payroll. I've got a very high opinion of payroll professionals, obviously. So
absolutely. But I think it's and it's definitely also related to having the right person in the right role and just having that right gel in there as well, because that I think is also quite key. Apart from having the right skill set, but having that gelling ability within an organization is also quite important, and it can have that effect. So just to get back to sort of what we were talking about, Brendan, I know that we've gone off a little bit, but how do you think technology has impacted the payroll industry and the skills required for payroll professionals?
I think tech has definitely illustrated just how complex and involved the payroll industry is. It's quite fascinating over the years to see, some of the roles that I would start to pick up. I would feel, this would normally sit within a tech or a HR sort of role. So I think tech has definitely illustrated just how complex and how tricky, interpretations and data, how hard it is to get it right. I think the new tech coming through, it will go a long way in, doing some of the heavy lifting. But I see payroll moving more into an advisory sort of position rather than this data entry, crunching of numbers. So that's my view of tech. It's been fantastic, but it's also brought, a number of issues as well. But it has highlighted also some of the lack of investment within the space. I know with some of the implementations I've been involved in, when they've gone to look under the hood before they've implemented the new system, there's zero documentation. These workarounds for the workarounds. It's just highlighted. Oh gosh, this really is a mess, and there needs to be like 12 months worth of work before we've even started the 18-month implementation to get things into an okay state before working on this implementation.
Yeah. And I know we've touched on this a little bit just earlier, Brendan, but do you think organizations are investing enough to upskill their payroll teams to stay abreast of tech changes?
There's been a large amount of investment lately. I think, some of the feedback I'm getting is, well, look, we just invested X amount of dollars in this U-Boot system. They want to start seeing returns for their investment through streamlining and optimization and cost cutting. So I'd love for us to shift how we view payroll, as in it's not a one and done. Arguably it's an industry that's been neglected for investment within systems and processes has been not where it needs to be for a number of years. We need continual investment as it's continually changing. It just makes sense that both of those need to go side by side. For us to stay up to date and relevant and compliant, you need to continually train and develop people.
Yeah. Okay. So, based on this, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to start a career in payroll?
if I was looking to start a career in payroll, I would reach out to, payroll managers, senior leaders, and have a conversation with them. Payroll people are generally pretty upfront and honest, and they usually call it as they see it. Ask around, do you have a junior vacancy? It'll only take a few pay runs for you to realize if you're cut out for payroll or not.
Yeah,
Just chat with professionals in the space and get a feeling as to whether or not you could see yourself within the role.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I know, this sort of next couple of questions are probably a little bit more related to what we're going to talk about a little bit later on, but I do want to ask them at this point because we do have another question from a viewer that I think fits into what we're going to be talking about now. So if someone, or how would someone choose to get into payroll? How would they be able to make that decision, and what steps will they need to take, or is there enough available for people to be able to make this decision?
I mean, I would be very proactive. Like I said, go in and do a trial period. Most of my clients, I think, would appreciate someone proactively reaching out to them and showing that initiative. It might just be a junior payroll admin or that sort of thing. So maybe some sort of work experience, but definitely speaking with people in the space and then reaching out and just networking. I would network and reach out, which is hard to do and easy for me to say
Yeah,
as a recruiter, but I would network and just ask questions, be curious, and you won't know till you try, essentially.
absolutely. That's right. And because we've got a question here from Priyanka, who's asked, do you think a combination of payroll and HR both is a big plus in today's market, having both bits of experience?
Yeah, it does help. I mean, payroll unfortunately do sometimes do roles outside of just payroll. Obviously, being able to do that, the HR duties as well, that will definitely, even just having an understanding of the whole process and how things connect and fit together. I mean, that's where senior leaders are at. They understand the flow and effect of everything from from hire to retire, essentially, and that's where they're able to streamline systems and processes. So having an understanding of that process is only going to benefit you. Even being across finance, recruitment, it's all going to be beneficial at the end of the day.
Yep. So, there really is a massive need to improve the supply of payroll talent, I think, in the industry. Obviously, we're all in agreement of that. And I think we really do need to get the next generation into the game and promote our sector and payroll as a career more, not just to one another, but outside this great network of professionals, because I think we need people to understand the gold mine that is here in payroll. So, on that note, Brendan, what steps can organizations take to attract and retain um, top payroll talent? First of all, that's the first question.
Yeah. I support your payroll, HRIS, and governance teams. Candidates, they're wanting to work for organisations who are investing in their systems and their processes. Who are open to working from home flex. People are wanting to feel appreciated and valued. Take governance seriously. I feel there's been a little bit of a drop off. It seems to go in cycles of people taking, organisations taking governance seriously. And most of my conversations these days are around, personal concerns of, am I liable if things go sideways here because I know things aren't where they need to be. So, organisations, being on the same page with payroll professionals. This isn't just a payroll issue. This is everyone's. This is all of us. We need to get together and get all on the same page if we can. And work towards the common goal, because I see things getting trickier and trickier, and it's a business critical function and it needs our support.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree 100%. And moving into, I suppose, the next question is, are there any initiatives based on sort of following on from your earlier comments? Are there any initiatives or programs that you believe are particularly effective in boosting the number of qualified candidates that we have in the payroll industry?
Um, I've only heard of things that some of my clients are doing. For example, I have some clients who do buddy systems, who involve junior candidates with seniors, to expose them to different systems and processes. A lot of it all seems to be, the individual, driven by the individual within the organization who's wanting to grow and develop. I've got a candidate that I've dealt with in the past who actually took it upon herself to create all the L&D for this organization whilst they were going through an implementation. So she actually went through and did all the documentation, all the training videos herself, but this was all very much led by that individual. So I think, opening up the teams, allowing for cross exchange of information, that seems to work well in getting multi-skilled talent. But then it's also having the time to develop these people as well, which, as I mentioned earlier in the piece, payroll professionals are very time poor. So it's a tricky one because it involves so many moving parts to get us up to speed.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But I mean, I know that there is something that obviously we're putting in place, which I've been speaking a little bit about on LinkedIn, and everyone will be hearing more about it with the graduate program that we're putting together. That will hopefully boost or help the next gen getting into payroll and some of the issues we're having with the payroll gap. But Brendan, how can, in your opinion, educational institutions better prepare students for careers in payroll?
I think just having it on the radar. I mean, I know when I went and spoke with at school, like I didn't even know payroll was a thing until 5 years ago. And my dad's an accountant, and he was like, why are you recruiting in payroll? What are you doing? But since then I've run him through some of the work that I've done, and he's like, actually, that sounds really complex. So just having it on the radar for these education, I don't even think it's on the radar. So there's a lot of conversations that need to happen, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done to push this. Payroll is incredibly complex and tricky, but it's a very rewarding career, and there is so much that you can do. There's so many different directions that you can go these days across operations, leadership, consulting, systems, governance. There's a lot. It's pretty much, you can make it what you want. It's a really exciting space, and I highly recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Brendan. And I've had the pleasure, or maybe I should say the experience of speaking to schools about payroll. It is tough, right? Because we need to get the kids to understand that this is definitely a career, and that it is a very good career. So, before we can get to the students, to talk to them about payroll, we really do need to convince the teachers. We need to convince careers advisors that this is an option for the next generation, and it's a very good option. It's a very fulfilling option. It's a very viable option, and I think it's getting through because I'm getting some more success with schools lately. When I'm talking to them about our program and about getting the next generation into payroll. So you're absolutely right. We definitely need to get out there a little more and, speak to people who are not part of the industry to understand what we do in our industry. And this leads us into the challenges that we face in the industry, particularly because of the perception of payroll as a career and the payroll industry in general. So what are some common misconceptions about working in payroll that you would like to dispel?
I think I would really love to change how we speak about payroll. As you see in the media, it's never ever really spoken about favorably. It's always doom and gloom, and there's a lot of pressure on payroll professionals. But payroll is payroll is a career for a start, and it is a very interesting and exciting place to be. I really want to shift how we perceive payroll as this doom and gloom sort of environment, and see it as the exciting and fulfilling role that it can be. I'd love to raise the awareness of the complexity of the space. It's not, like I said, just sitting in the back corner pushing a big magic button. There is actually a lot that goes into paying people correctly and on time. I'd also like to change that, it's not just a payroll problem. It's all of our problems. There are so many things that affect payroll that are not, underpaid. Could be the managers on site approving incorrect timesheets, or not telling payroll that is an employee that's finished up with them. There's so much that needs to be done to raise awareness of systems and processes that affect payroll. So it's really just around elevating payroll and our perception of payroll, and for it to be recognised for what it is.
Yeah. And so in terms of the payroll professionals themselves, what do you think their individual biggest challenges are today, and how do you think they can be addressed?
It very much depends on the organisation that you're within. But, I would argue it's generally a lack of resourcing causing burnout, as well as governance not being taken as seriously. We need continual investment within the space. Like I've said, it's a transforming industry. We need to keep transforming with it. We need to recognise the complexities of payroll and support the professionals within this space accordingly. So I'm pushing for continuous investment, essentially, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Priyanka's actually made a very interesting comment here. And so she said in her 8 years of experience, people keep saying that you work to get paid, but we work as payroll professionals to pay others. How is that even possible? Thank you for that, Frankie. Yeah, you're absolutely right, isn't it? It's so true. Everyone works to get paid, but we work to pay people. So let's talk the future, Brendan. How do you see the payroll recruitment landscape evolving over the next sort of 5 to 10? Well, I won't say 10 years. I'd say 5 years.
I see it getting trickier unless, some drastic changes do happen around support for current professionals and then professionals making their way into the space. I really like what you're putting together, Nilly, around the traineeship sort of GPA program. I think that will be, critical for the success of the industry, having that study and the placement as well. I would love to work towards a proactive payroll instead of a reactive payroll. So, I think it will be tricky, but, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I do see a very bright future for the payroll industry.
Yeah. And what innovations or changes do you hope to see in the payroll industry in the near future, let's say?
Yeah. So obviously, I know I mentioned it a fair few times, just continual investment in the people and the tech within the industry. I mean, it's not just monetary investment, it's time. It could be kind of 30-minute training sessions every month, or workshops, that sort of thing. And then just a shift in mindset of organizations towards payroll, recognition of what payroll is, elevating how we see and speak about payroll. Just also an openness for organizations to consider candidates who maybe don't have the exact system or industry experience, but have that good motivation and drive. Like I said previously, I've had a fair amount of success with candidates who are just switched on and motivated and hungry to grow and develop, and being given a shot, and they've ended up absolutely excelling within the organization. I'd much rather put someone who's motivated and driven in a role than someone who's got 10 years system experience, but doesn't quite have that hunger and to grow and develop.
Yeah. So we're getting to the end of our session today, guys. The last sort of half an hour has gone by very, very quickly. Obviously, a lot to talk about. So if you do have any last minute questions, please sort of start popping them into the chat so that we can get them out to Brendan. And sort of just to finish off, there's a few more questions I just want to sort of, or pointers that I want to ask for here. Brendan, how can payroll professionals stay motivated and inspired in their career journey?
I think, surround yourself with like-minded peers, go to events, sign up to newsletters, stay up to date with changes, developments in the space. I think payroll can be quite lonely at times, but by connecting within these communities, it reconfirms that you are not alone. There are people out there going through what you're going through right now, and there are people who are trying to improve things as well. So very much connect with your peers and just network where possible. And then, yeah, stay up to date with changes, because there's always interesting things popping through, and that keeps me motivated as well, learning about new things that are coming through. So that would be my recommendations.
Great. And if you could change one thing about the payroll recruitment process, Brendan, what would it be and why? Is that going to be a little bit controversial? Or are you going to be a little bit controversial?
I'd love to have everyone on the same page with what we're needing from the role. Sometimes there's, a mixed message from HR, finance, and payroll. When we're recruiting a role, having a unified approach to, okay, this is what we're needing to fix X, Y, Z, or to support the business growth. So just having it, because then it gets confusing for the process as to what we're actually needing. So everyone being on the same page would be amazing.
Yeah. And do you want to share any final advice or insights about navigating the payroll job market?
I'd say to take it slow. The grass is not always greener. It's a bit of an interesting time in the market. Do your homework on what's happening within that business or the industry itself. Make sure that you've done your due diligence. But yeah, don't be in a rush. I would highly recommend candidates to take it slow and make sure that they're making the right move for what they're wanting from their careers and where they're wanting to head and go, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Now, as we are getting into these are the final minutes of our discussion. So we've just had Priyanka has just advised me that it obviously wasn't her comment. That was her daughter, who's 8 years old, who mentioned that, which is a great bit of insight from an 8-year-old, I have to say, to figure that out. So yeah, if there's any final questions, please do pop them in. But finally, Brendan, just to close off, what key takeaways would you like the audience to remember from our discussion today?
That payroll is a career, that it's an exciting space to be. There's a lot happening, and the future of payroll is very, very bright. There is a lot of work that does need to be done, but I'm excited for it, and you should be as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing where we end up in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Fantastic. And to be honest, I am definitely looking forward to seeing, I don't know about the next 20 or even 10 years, but the next 5 years for me, I think is, I'm really excited about seeing what's going to happen, what's going to change, what the whole sort of industry is going to look like. And it will be interesting to see what happens in the talent space in payroll. And I really do hope that, we can start getting the next generation in so that, we've got the younger people coming through and people who are understanding that payroll is, an enjoyable, viable, rewarding career path. So I really do hope that we can all come together as an industry to get that going as well. But thank you so much, Brendan, for joining us today. It's been a great, insightful discussion. Thank you, everybody who's joined us. And please feel free to send any questions out to myself or Brendan. Feel free to reach out to Brendan if you have any questions about payroll recruitment, about payroll careers in Australia, and how he might be able to help you with your payroll talent needs. So thanks for joining us, Brendan. Thank you to all.
Thank you for having me, Nilly. It's been great.
Great. Thanks. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Bye.